Well, hello, everybody. Hey, Nate.
Hello, Greg. Hello, everybody on the internet. I'm Nate Swick. That's Greg Neise. We're here with another of our bi-weekly What's This Bird live programs. We've been doing a great job keeping these up, if I may just pat ourselves
I,
on the back a little bit. This is like 4 weeks straight that we've kept our schedule.
we
Amazing,
have.
amazing stuff, Greg. We're excited to be here and talk
Yes.
birds and birding with all of y'all. If you are unfamiliar, perhaps, with what we do here, the American Birding
Hard to
Association,
believe.
the ABA, I know at this point, we've been doing this for years. Where have you been? The American Birding Association hosts a number of groups on Facebook, one of which is called What's This Bird? It's a friendly community of bird lovers who want to help you identify birds that you see. What happens is that folks take photos, take videos, take recordings of birds that they want identified. They post them in the group
Or
in our
notes.
friendly community, or notes too. Sometimes we'll do
Yep.
notes. All that we ask is you don't take pictures of like fine art or whatever, or weird birds that aren't birds. Please make it be a real bird. Anyway, people post them online, and we help identify them. Every once in a while, we get some stuff that we'd like to talk a little bit more about. Maybe it's something that is timely for the season. Maybe it's something that Greg and I will disagree about and then argue about and make good television. Who knows? It could be any number of those things,
Just
but we'll
could be
come to
something
you
weird.
every 2 weeks, and we'll talk about it here on this program. Hey, migration is going on. It's a thing. It's happening, Greg. And I was driving down the road the other day, and like six common nighthawks just flew over my car. I thought it was crazy. I love common nighthawks, and I very
Oh,
rarely see more than one or two of them. But they're moving. Everything's moving.
well, when we get Nighthawks here, we have a really good time with them. I had I think it was a week and a half ago, maybe a little more.
Hmm.
Than that, the beginning of September, I had a couple thousand go over my
Yeah,
house.
that's
I
good
had
stuff.
one kettle of about 400 or 500 at one time, and we're now
Kettle, like kettle.
yeah, they kettle over parking lots and stuff. You know, where they catch a thermal over a parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, we're also in post breeding wandering season, which is
Yeah, a lot of
a
things
lot
moving
of
for lots of
fun.
different.
You guys down south and out east have been having a lot of fun with wood storks, but the Mississippi Valley
Yeah.
until today, or yesterday actually, Illinois finally got a wood stork down at Clinton
I
Lake
saw that in DeWitt.
in central Illinois. Yep. Um, but yeah, tis the season for that stuff, and we've got some people popping in on Facebook saying hi. I want to say hi to Gavin, Len, Daphne, and Mark. And Gavin says there's a golden-fronted woodpecker in Colorado, and he went to see it.
I've seen it. Oh, that's
Um,
cool. People
that's
are
a
convinced that that's an actual golden-fronted woodpecker. That's nice. They got photos of the tail. Apparently, that's
that is a tough
the thing
bird to
you want to look
ID,
for.
especially in that
Yeah.
plumage.
Yep. We've got some folks saying hi on YouTube. Jimbo from Manitoba, Andrew from DC, Nancy Kitchen. Hi to everybody out there.
Yeah,
One of the fun things about this program is that it
just
is
gonna say.
live. We are identifying birds on a high wire with no net, if you can believe it. So if you have anything that you would like to talk about, any interesting bird observations, any questions about birds and birding that you would like us to weigh in on, we're happy to do so. Please drop those in the comments, and we'll keep an eye on those and answer those when we get a chance to do so. I got a shadow on my. There we go. I don't know what's going on here. Got my light all messed up. Oh, that didn't help. Anyway, we're excited to have you here, and we're excited to talk about birding. Greg, I think we've vamped about long enough. Shall we get to the program itself? But wait,
Yeah, I
there's
think
one thing to talk about just before we do that.
there's always something to talk about just before.
Always.
Um, so, let me see here. Oh, wait a second. There we go. Push the wrong button.
Yeah.
So, coming
our
coming
APA
up
community
toward
weekends have been huge. A lot of fun.
yes, coming up they have been very popular, and coming up at the end of October we have one in Sacramento. Um, and as always, these community weekend events are a lot of fun. I wish that we could do one in Chicago because I'd like to check it out.
It's probably
I'm
just
sure,
a matter of time.
I'm sure that's going to happen. But this one's going to be helped along by Sacramento Audubon. And we have, as always, OM System out there to give you some cameras. I think they're going to be not just demoing, but you can take cameras out in the field and try them out. Also,
Their friends
Vortex.
at Vortex have binoculars as well.
Vortex will have binoculars available for people to try.
Community weekends have been a ton of fun. So if you'd like to participate, they're totally free. A free weekend of birding, birds and beers, workshops, things of that nature. If you would like to go to this one in Sacramento or to check out any of our future ABA community weekends, please go to aba.org and sign up. Once again, entirely free, but we do ask you to sign up so we have an idea about numbers. And
Absolutely.
if you are a member of Audubon chapter, bird club, bird organization, whatever, anywhere in the U.S. and Canada, and you would like to get in touch with us about potentially hosting one of these ABA community weekends where you are, please get in touch with Katinka Domen, our events coordinator. That's K Domen, KDOMEN at ABA.org. And maybe we can get something worked out and get one of these in your own backyard.
Absolutely. And this one, we have a couple of really fun things. We've got Steve Ball, is a photographer, and he's going to share some tips for capturing what they call cover-worthy bird photos, which I think everybody who goes out birding wants that. And and Natasha
most of my photos I like to cover up.
And I haven't gotten a cover-worthy photo in a long time, but I've gotten some great pictures
Every
of
once
some
in a while,
weird,
I stumble
good
over it,
birds. And Natasha Fontaine, our Bird of the Year artist, is going to be doing an art talk and workshop as well. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And as Nate said, all free. There's bird walks, there's birds and beers. So check it out, aba.org. It's right there on the homepage. You can't miss it. And we hope to see you out there.
Yeah, a lot of fun. Please check them out.
So we're going to go to New Mexico for our first bird. And little brown guy, kind of short conical bill. I think we can pretty much say this is a sparrow or a finch.
Yeah, plump body, large head, long tail, relatively short-ish legs. But again, that bill and sort of that dry, kind of open, brushy habitat definitely leads us towards sparrows for sure. You know, you've got other birds that will have this sort of conical shaped bill. Finches, for one, tend to be a little bit shorter tailed, more kind of even in the way that they kind of sit up. This horizontal posture, this long tail, this big chunky head, all says New World sparrow to me, Greg.
I agree, and the long tail, and that face pattern, with the sort of the eye line and the malar and the crown and the gray behind the neck there, that points me to three birds that people generally have problems with, except with breeding plumaged birds. And that,
I was going to say, before we get there, I would just want to talk briefly about how you can a lot of times break sparrows down by genus. A lot of times, so there are kind of groups of sparrows that are all kind of slightly shaped differently. And once you kind of get a sense of what group your sparrow, your mystery bird goes into, it makes these identifications a lot easier. Three of the major ones that we talk about a lot are Zonotrichia, which is your big, plump, plain-breasted sparrows, like your white-throated sparrow, your white-crowned
bulky
sparrow.
guys.
Yeah, they tend to be very large and with a very strong face pattern, a lot of times with some white and big black splotches on the face somewhere. You get your Melospiza, which is the song sparrow, Lincoln sparrow, swamp sparrow, tends to be kind of streaky, a little bit smaller, a little bit more lanky. But they a lot of times they're going to have something on the front of that bird. And then you've got your Spizella birds, which is chipping, clay-colored, brewers, those things. A lot of times they're very plain, and that's the other one. A lot of times they're very plain, kind of long-tailed, And this one fits very strongly into that Spizella genus for me. Plain breast, very
Yep.
strong, striking face pattern, long tail, brushy habitat, all that stuff.
And a small bird, yeah. And
Mhm.
New Mexico, we can more or less rule out field sparrow by range, although I'm sure that they have occurred there. But
Probably a few, Worthen sparrow, if we're going to go all the way
well,
out
yeah,
there.
let's not go
West
there.
Mexican
Um,
endemic that maybe has shown up in the U.S. We're not sure about that
once
anyway.
maybe. Um, but the face pattern rules out field sparrow right away, because
Yes.
field sparrow is a very plain, open face pattern where the eye is the most noticeable thing,
Hmm.
and almost always shows a noticeably pink bill.
Yeah,
And
and a
really,
big eye
when you
ring a
when
lot
you
of times
get
too.
when you get familiar with field sparrows, they're kind of pink all over. Their whole
Yeah,
body, the plumage, they're
I'd
kind
agree
of
with that.
pinkish and gray.
Yeah, the
And
the tan is very got almost a pinkish hue,
yeah, compared
to
to the
it
other Spizellas, I mean,
for
and
sure.
the rusty crown and the rusty tones and the gray, they kind of blend together to make a sort of an overall pinkish feel, and the pink bill just adds to that. So, anyways, the in New Mexico, the three birds we're looking at are clay colored, chipping, and brewers. Um,
Mhm.
all of which I'm sure could be found at Santa Rosa Lake in the fall. So, and this bird, it's not real close, so it's really kind of hard to tell which one it is exactly. Looking at this picture, can you see
Yeah.
whether it looks like it has dark lores? That's the space between the
So yeah,
eye.
I was gonna point that out because chipping sparrow, as we know, is one of those birds that has a well known to have this very dark, almost black eye line that runs from the base of the bill through the eye to the back. It's a very striking field mark, and you see it in most chipping sparrows. Almost all chipping sparrows will have it,
Yeah,
regardless of whether it's winter plumage, summer plumage, juvenile birds, whatever. This bird does not seem to have that,
that
or at
doesn't.
least not to the extent that I would want it to be. And as you point out, Greg, rightly, that space between the eye and the bill, there's not a lot going on there. It looks awfully pale, and the stripe as it goes beyond the eye does kind of flare out
It
a
kind
little
of
bit,
flares.
and it's not as dark as I'd want to see in a chipping sparrow. And just to look at the whole bird here, chipping sparrow, even this late in the fall, is going to be very gray, especially on the
Yep.
breast. And this one is awfully beige, kind of tan, whatever
Mm-hmm.
word you want to use, khaki, but it's definitely not gray. And so I think we've got enough here to rule out chipping sparrow.
Yeah, and if I remember right, we're going to go to the comp now. I think they included a second image that
Oh,
slam
great!
dunks
Always
it.
nice. We love multiple images on
Yeah,
our birds.
there's
That
the
definitely
second
helps.
image right there. On the
Mhm.
far left is the same bird with its head now turned to us. So I'm just going to
Yeah.
flip back
Yep.
to that. So you see that's the bird sitting there looking to the left, and now there it
It's
is
got a pretty
looking
dark
directly
cap,
at
but
us.
when it looks directly at you, that cap is bifurcated. Is that the right word for that? There's a big
Uh,
old white stripe in the middle of
It's
it.
got a big old white stripe going down the center of the crown, and that identifies it as a clay colored. If we look at chipping and brewers over there to the right, as Nate was talking about, the eye line in the chipping
Look at that
starts at
dark
the
eye
bill,
line. Yeah.
goes through the eye and behind the eye, and stays more or less constant in
Yep.
width. Clay colored tends to flare behind the eye.
Hmm.
And you look at brewers, it's like everything's been scrubbed out. It's just
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, it's
washed
really
out.
washed out.
It's like it's sort of like in between the two, but it's just kind of scrubbed out, and it has a very noticeable eye ring
Mhm.
compared to the other two.
Yeah, almost like a
So
field sparrow a little bit.
a
Another
little
thing to
bit.
point out on that clay colored sparrow is that malar is always such a very distinctive part of the face pattern. That
It is.
mustache, that kind of whitish beige line that goes down, just maybe about 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock on the bill, 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock, depending on which direction the bird is looking at you. But it does have the little mustache here that you see that, and that's less prominent on a chipping sparrow, though they can show a little bit of it. And,
Usually,
blue
although
sparrow as
they
well.
they can. I mean, chippy,
Not a ton, though. Yeah.
a first winter chippy and clay colored can be tough.
Yeah.
But the chippy, it tends to sort of stray more into, and I'm getting pretty esoteric here, into the face pattern of a house sparrow, whereas clay colored definitely does not. And it's the eye lines, both the line through the eye and over the eye, and the general face pattern sort of kind of trends that way more. But I've seen some chipping sparrows that I've had to spend a lot of time with, just to make sure that the lure is really dark and get a good look at the crown. I mean, even when they're young, clay colored shows some of that white in the crown, and where it gets weird is chipping. The center part of their crown is gray, and they can start to show that too, and so it gets a little. So it's not as straightforward as it might be, but and maybe we'll do a deep dive into those two.
We get, and I'm sure where you are in Illinois, clay-colored sparrow is a fairly regular fall migrant. Even where I live in the southeast, clay-colored sparrow, we get a small handful of them every single year. And they typically do hang out with winter chipping sparrows. That's not uncommon. Sparrows love to group together in multi-species flocks in the winter, and a lot of times we'll get those big flocks of chipping sparrows, and there will be a clay-colored hiding in there. And the thing that really stands out to me is that face pattern. That's one of the things that you see, and the overall color. It's much paler, much more beige compared to the gray of a chipping sparrow, and that does. I mean, sometimes you can get awfully close, but for the most part, that's going to be the thing that's going to make you realize that you're looking at something different than a chipping sparrow. They also tend to be a little bit bigger, although that's a subtle thing.
Yeah, they'd have to be right next to each other for that.
Yeah. Ellen Seidemann asks, are they rare in New Mexico? Assume referring to clay-colored sparrow. No, I would think that's a quite a common sight in the Southwest, in the south central part of the country.
Yeah, that's their wintering. That's their wintering range. Is those southern grasslands, I think, all the way into southeast Arizona.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And while we're over on Facebook here, we've got Christy, Susan, Beverly, Mia's in the house.
Hey,
Mark Lundgren, Beverly Cronin, and our pal Jake Vinsel are all in here with us at Facebook. Listen to us rattle on about little rattling sparrows. What else do we got? All right, it's fall warbler time.
It's confusing fall warbler time. Thank you, Roger Torrey Peterson, for giving generations of birders a mental block when it comes to fall warblers.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's a warbler. We're just gonna go right there with it.
Yeah. The kind of a short tail. Very yellow. Most of our bright yellow birds are
green-backed and
this
plain.
time of year. Kind of a long, thinner bill, I should say. Some things to think about on this bird. Not a lot in terms of kind of conventional field marks. No wing bars. No eye ring.
No.
Not a lot of pattern in the wings and tail that we can see. Although I suspect that there is something there. Kind of flesh gray colored legs, overall green, a lot of yellow. Hard to get a sense of what the undertail or the undertail coverts.
Yeah, it could be reflection off the leaves. It's hard to tell, but
exactly. I get a feeling that there's some saturation going on here. When we're talking about yellow warblers, there's a handful of them to dismiss.
Well, I think we can get rid of.
A yellow warbler is one of them. Blue-winged would have wing bars.
Blue-winged would have wing bars.
What else? Prothonotary would probably have a longer bill, less yellow.
Prothonotary would have a big bill.
Big bill, short tail, and be more kind of gray as opposed to green on the back.
Going back to yellow warbler, we would see some yellow in the wings or the tail. Even a gray, even a gray or yellow warbler still shows some color in the wings and the tail, and a pretty distinct eye ring. Well, one of the things that I noticed about this bird, and it's hard to see, but yeah, because I think that just the overall video quality as it's being put through Facebook, at least as I see it, I'm looking at the image in two places here at the same time. But a couple of things that I noticed about this bird's face is the bill's a little bit on the wide side, and it's something we talked about last time. Is this bird has rictal bristles? It's got those little hair-like feathers that stick up around.
We're gonna go into the weeds about.
We're not going to go into the weeds with that again. Just going to point out that it has them, and there aren't a lot of warblers that have that. It also seems to have dark feathering between the eye and the bill. But
dark lore, maybe even an eye line, but not much of one.
Yeah, but that can be so difficult to tell when a bird is in this position and in this lighting. Birds
true, because the feather tracts will be right there, and so that's where the feathers like the part of a hair. When your hair parts, you can see the scalp in between. That's sort of what we're looking at when we see the feather tracks. Sometime
precisely, and birds can move
dark, downy base of the feathers.
Birds can move those tracts individually, and that's how hummingbirds do all that wonderful stuff with their gorgets and ear panels and everything else. But yeah, so I mean, really, when we really narrow it down, like morning. Undertail coverts are too short for morning. Tail's too long.
Agree with that.
There's not enough gray on the head. It just doesn't look like a morning. Morning's a different shape. Really, when we get down to it, we get down to.
Now used to be Operornis. Yeah.
Yeah, we get down to two species really, and that would be hooded and Wilson's. And we've talked a lot about a picture of a bird, a single picture of a bird versus seeing the bird in life, and how they can be really confusing in the photo. But if you saw this bird for 25 seconds, you would probably be able to identify it.
There are certainly behavioral cues between Wilson's and hooded that would make that identification a little bit easier.
Yeah, so let's just take a look at and as with the last one, the photographer sent along a second image, which confirms that this bird is a hooded warbler, and those dark lores are for real.
For real.
And so the bottom left is the same bird, just in a different pose, and we can see those dark lores that separate it from Wilson's warbler. But the two images at the top there are the ones that I was talking about earlier. Hooded warbler has white inner webs to its outer 3-4 tail feathers.
Yeah.
And it constantly, as it flits around, it just constantly flicks its tail open and shut like this, as the bird above there is doing.
Yep.
And a Wilson's warbler
opening the tail, I should say.
It does.
Not
it flashes
flicking,
that
because
white
flicking
open and closed.
Is a field mark of Wilson's warbler, who likes to sit with its tail kind of cocked up a lot of times, kind of a classic Wilson's, almost like a gnat catcher. And
almost like a gnat catcher.
Throw its tail back and forth, usually closed, however, but it will throw its tail back and forth as it forages, which is similar to what a hooded warbler does. But
if you look at the two birds at the top, the hooded warbler just sort of has a general impression. Like if I made that a silhouette, the first two species that your mind would jump to, I think, would be American redstart and hooded warbler.
Yeah, they both do the tail thing. Yeah.
They both do the tail thing. They both have rictal bristles. They both tend to have their wings held down a little bit, and they feed in kind of the same manner.
Yeah, they like catching flying insects. Yep.
Exactly. And they're often on the ground, just sort of, hooded warbler is often on or near the ground and just doing low little hops. Wilson's warbler
I always think of a hooded warbler as a very low level
Yeah,
warbler. Not low level in terms of strikiness because it's a high level warbler.
it is a
As the
high
kids
level.
say, S tier. But
Absolutely.
as terms of where it is in the forest structure, it is a low bird. It doesn't
Eye
typically like to
level
get
and
much
below
higher than about
usually.
15 or 20 feet at the most, and that's a singing male. At the highest point of his range. Where Wilson's warbler is like that too, but Wilson's warbler is more of a shrubby habitat warbler, more open stuff, at least in my experience. Whereas hooded warbler is like a forest interior bird.
Yeah,
Although
hooded
in fall
warbler
you can throw
likes.
that stuff out.
I mean, especially during migration, hooded warbler likes edges. It likes it likes things like mowed lawns and mulch next to gardens and things. You'll find it down on the ground there, chasing bugs around on the ground. Wilson's warbler, as you said, it tends to like brambles. It tends to get into the thicket. And when you do get a look at it, it very often looks like that bird at the top right.
Exactly. There's
It's
no
like
more
you've
classic
startled
Wilson's
it.
warbler pose.
It's
Yeah.
got its tail up, and it's like that's a very classic Wilson's warbler pose. Very much like a chestnut-sided. It's like chestnut-sided is the southern version of a Wilson's warbler.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always think of Wilson's warbler as kind of small-bodied, long-tailed, big head, and I don't always think of chestnut-sided warbler that way. But mostly that could be just because of the pattern on a chestnut-sided warbler as opposed to a Wilson's warbler, especially in the spring. Fall chestnut-sided warblers are quite different and very distinct, but they do move around a lot like a Wilson's warbler. But the pattern is sort of broken up. I just think of like the Wilson's warbler is just that big black eye staring at me. I see one. That's like the defining characteristic of a Wilson's warbler.
Exactly. And you'll see that the black lores of a hooded warbler just gives it an entirely different look to the face. It doesn't have that open staring eye that you see on a Wilson's warbler. Christy Bass says, I have found the few Wilson's warblers I have ever seen within fairly close proximity to a body of water, similar to Prothonotary.
They love willows.
Well, they do like willows,
next to like a pond or a seep. Yeah, for sure. It's one of those things like if we were going to change the name of Wilson's warbler, Willow Warbler would have been a great name if it wasn't already taken.
Well, on Facebook, Gavin Alving says, this is why I think blackcap warbler is not a good de-honorified name for this species.
De-eponymed.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't always have a black cap, and a lot of times
they don't always have a black cap.
Yellow.
But when they do, it's stunning.
Yeah, very nice.
It's a good-looking bird. Well, both of them, and
both of them are nice, very nice.
But yeah, and the well, I don't know what I was going to go on to then. So we're going to go on to the next bird.
Warbler is still one that takes my breath away every time I see it.
Yeah. We're going to go to my neck of the woods, Winnetka, Illinois. I think we can
say big old water bird.
Big old water bird. That's what I was.
Yeah.
I think we can safely say that we got one of the wading water birds here.
Yeah. The ones that look like this. There's a few. You've got your herons and egrets for sure. You've got your rails, and you've got limpkin. This isn't a limpkin, although the pattern on the body looks quite close. Limpkin with a very long, curved bill, very distinctive. So we can throw that out. Rails. It doesn't sit like a rail. Rails are often kind of horizontal. Slinking
rails don't really sit up like that on branches.
They're not going to be sitting on it. There have been places where they might. King and clapper especially has a tendency to like to show itself more than other rails, but again, kind of a long, thin, decurved bill. This bird does not have that. This bird has a railroad spike bill that is typical of our herons and egrets.
Agreed. And if we look at status and distribution, Winnetka, Illinois is a suburb north of Chicago, and black-crowned night heron is very common. And all over the place, mostly due to the Lincoln Park breeding colony. But other brown speckled herony birds do show up there. American bittern certainly can be seen during migration. And yellow-crowned night heron is another one. And we're talking about in the case of a bittern, adult plumage, and in the case of the night herons here, we're talking about juvenile plumage. And really that sort of all kind of gets us into the box of night heron identification, which is a very common
always been a
fall
tough one.
conundrum for birders.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that our black-crowned night heron and yellow-crowned night herons are not actually all that closely related.
No.
Funnily enough, but they do a lot of the same thing, and the juveniles especially look quite similar. So some things to think about when we're looking at these birds are leg color, bear part color, bill color, and shape, and the I don't know, sort of the general pattern of the streaks and splotches on the bird itself. It would be, this is a little bit more difficult because I think that the front side of the bird is a little more distinctive for each of them than the back side. But we're looking at this bird. I think we can see the bill quite well and the legs quite well, and that should be enough.
I think we can, and
please.
I think that the thing that threw me off when I first saw this photo, I like to look at these pictures quickly and sort of snap a judgment and then look at them again.
Get your gut.
Because that's how I find interesting things to talk about in this.
Yeah.
For this,
your gut says
show.
One thing, and then you stop and look at something slightly differently. Yeah.
Exactly. The way this bird is posed, turned partially towards us, is foreshortening the bill, and it's making it look shorter and thicker than it really is. But you can still see that the upper mandible is more curved than the lower,
curvy.
Which is straight, and maybe even a little bit recurved a little bit. And it also looks kind of leggy at this angle, but is it really? Let's take a look. So the bird there that we were looking at is on the left there, and it is a black-crowned night heron. And we're going to compare it with the other two streaky brown things. And as Nate was saying,
American bittern, very interesting. The eye looks so small on an American bittern when you compare it to night herons. Night herons, night birds, they have a huge eye for picking out frogs and crabs and whatever else they're going to eat at night. And so they have these giant red staring eyes, regardless of where a night heron is found anywhere around the world. And there are a number of species of birds we call night herons. They all have these big old eyes because they're all primarily, if not nocturnal, definitely crepuscular.
Yes.
Which is, in the evening and in the morning.
But
so not bittern is what I'm saying.
Not bittern. No, definitely not a bittern for all of those reasons, but also the pattern on a bittern, the pattern on the two night herons is very simple. It has white tips on most of the body feathers and wing panel feathers on the back, and then streaking on the front, which gives it a spotted look. The pattern on a bittern is incredibly intricate, and it's beautiful when you get a really good look at it. So for all those reasons, we can count out bittern. Looking at the two night herons from the bottom up, the bird on the left looked pretty leggy, and that was one of the things that made you kind of pause. Okay, which one is it? But look at the yellow-crowned night heron and how much leggier it is on the right.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things, like when you see one, you'll know, it's like, oh boy, that's really different.
Yeah, they're quite tall. Yeah,
they
stand
tall
quite tall a lot of times. They don't like to hunch over like black-crowned, which tends to be more, I don't know, Quasimodo-esque.
Well, I mean, and black-crowned has a shorter neck. It has a thinner neck, generally. I mean, appearing, and those long legs and the sort of neckier, longer, lankier gestalt of a yellow crown gives it a different look. But then there's that bill. There's that big, like, railroad spike of a bill that the yellow crown has for crushing crabs and things. And the black crown has a more, it's about the same length, but it's a little thinner and decurved, and we can see that it has yellow on the lower mandible, which black crown does not show.
Yellow crown, you mean?
I'm sorry,
black
yellow crown.
Has,
yes.
Yeah, I know. Here you go.
Black crown has yellow.
It's so confusing.
Yellow crown does not have yellow.
Yellow crown has black. Black crown has yellow. That's not confusing at all.
Not at all.
Yeah,
Not
the
at all.
the yellow-crowned night heron with that thick baton-shaped bill, the smaller spots, generally less of an intricate pattern or more. I don't know. It depends on how you value intricacy. But the bill shape and size is always a good thing to look to. And hey, black-crowned night heron. They like to be in big groups a lot of times. Usually, when you see
They
one
do.
black-crowned night heron and a lot of times a young bird, if you pan like the side of a pond, a lot of times you're going to find three, four, five more of them. I don't know that I've ever seen one black-crowned night heron except when it's just flying over. Like if they're perched, there's going to be some more tucked in there if you just stop looking. Yellow crown tends to be a little more solitary, and
Yes.
that's black-crowned night heron nests in these big rookeries with a lot of other breeding herons. Whereas the yellow crowned puts its nests in the weirdest places, sometimes not even close to water. I remember I've probably told this story on What's This Bird before.
Oh,
where
I'm sure we
found,
have, because
some folks found it's all the same stories. But when I lived in Chapel Hill in North Carolina, there was someone found a yellow crowned night heron nest, which is hard to find too because they barely make a nest at all. It's just like a
Yeah.
jumble of sticks, very haphazardly put together, and the top of an oak tree in this old established neighborhood. And so I went to go see it, and I was rolled into this old neighborhood, no water anywhere. Set up my scope on the side of the street and put it up in there, and there was a yellow-crowned night heron sitting on the nest. They are weird that way.
They
whereas
are.
black-crowned is much more conventionally heron-y.
I think I've mentioned this one before. There's a town in southern Illinois called Granite City, and there's a park in the middle of Granite City, and there's really no water. I mean, the Mississippi River isn't that far away, and there's a few sloughs and stuff, but the park has no water. It's got a baseball diamond and typical park stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's some huge trees that
Yeah.
border one of the baseball diamonds, and there's always just tons of people there cycling, playing, whatever. And way up on top of one of those trees, there's a yellow-crowned night heron nest that's just been there. They've been nesting up there for years. And you go there in a summer
Like
morning.
a red-shouldered hawk nest or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Except red-shouldered hawks, they're there because they can't shut up.
They're very loud. Yeah.
But night herons.
Walter Katindo in Facebook asks a good question.
Yes.
And the yellow-crowned eye is almost Sharpie-like big in proportion to the head. Yeah, I mean, I could give you that. I think that I don't know how much of that is the head shape, the bill size and shape, the kind of lanky, thin neck, thin looking neck because it has fewer feathers, whereas black-crowned night heron is typically a shorter necked, and so it makes the neck look a bit more substantial. I can see that. I mean, the eye is always just so big on these night herons and takes up so
on
much
both
of the
of
head,
them.
like disproportionately. Yeah.
I would say with juveniles, the yellow-crowned tends to be a little bit more orange or red than black-crowned, which tends to be a little bit yellower. But getting back to what Walter was saying, I have noticed that there is a difference in the placement, shape, and general impression of the eyes. And it's really hard to describe, but I'm going to try anyways. Black-crowned night heron just looks like a typical large-eyed bird. A yellow-crowned night heron, it tends to have the upper eyelid, and it tends to give a shape that looks a little bit different, and even might have, I don't know. You ever seen pictures of a secretary bird where it shows the eyelashes and the little drooping eyelid?
Yep.
Yellow-crowned night heron tends to show that a lot, and it's one of those things that's really hard to see and describe. But then once you see it, you're like, yeah, that's. And sharp-shinned hawk, what Walter was talking about, Sharpie, Sharpies. Again, well, if you've never seen a picture of a sharp-shinned hawk's skull, it's basically a set of flying eyeballs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, the skull is all eyes with this bill sticking out the front and a little brain behind it. And they always look, I say, like startled parakeets. And whereas Cooper's hawks have a much, little more serious expression. And there's a subtle difference like that between the night herons. But it's you got to look at a lot of them to really feel it out.
To that end, Boris Belchov, our friend from Lithuania, hello, joining us on
Hey,
YouTube,
Boris.
says, only ever seen black crowned night heron, understandable, cosmopolitan species, love using that word,
Yes,
found on 6 of the 7 continents. Black crowned night herons get around. So for me, it was obvious, never seen yellow crowned, would probably be a challenge to ID in the wild. Maybe. Don't sell yourself short, Boris. If you've seen a lot of black crowned night herons, yellow crowned night heron definitely stands out as something quite different.
absolutely.
Just in terms of how it presents itself, typically lankier, longer legged, longer, it likes to stand up taller, whereas black crown, hunched up. It's a different bird.
It
Even these
is.
young birds. Of course, the
It
adult
is.
ones are no brainer, but you know, yeah, they're
All
you
right.
see enough of them. As with everything,
It
repetition
is.
helps.
It is. It is. Now we're going to go to Minnesota, and
Another sparrow.
yeah, another sparrow, little guy. He's got some streaking on the breast. Got a
It's on a
central
sumac
dot.
tree there.
Got a in the sumac there. It's got a little dot
Yeah,
in the breast.
we were talking a little bit with the previous sparrow about how to kind of separate your sparrows by genus, and how Zonotrichia kind of looks one way, Spizella kind of looks another way, and how Melospiza is your kind of medium-sized sparrow with a lot of streaks on the front. Lo and behold, here we go. We've got a Melospiza here. Your three
Almost like this was
Melospizas.
planned.
I know, I know. I mean, I always talk about
Which it
sparrows.
wasn't, as you guys know.
Shut me up about sparrow genera. But yeah, so we've got three that we can regularly encounter in the ABA area in North America, and it is Song, Swamp, and Lincolns. Those are the three, and they can be difficult if you're not familiar with them, or even if you are sometimes and given a bad look. So Swamp Song, and Lincolns. Those are the three we're going to be working through on this guy.
Yeah, and I think we can get rid of swamp pretty quickly.
Agree. Agree.
This bird has too much of a face pattern, um, in the sense that it's got this kind of wide, buffy malar stripe, and it's got more or less a gray, gray face, but then it's got these streaking. It's got streaking on the breast and that dot in the center, and the streaks that go all the way down the flanks. Really, if this was a song sparrow or a swamp sparrow, it would look more grayish and subdued all over. If it was a young bird with streaking on the breast, which they do have, it would show some rufous in the flanks and some noticeable rufous in the wing panel, and even the tail at this angle, we'd be able to see some rufous.
Swamp sparrow is just generally an extremely richly colored sparrow, which makes it very very attractive sparrow. But it's always got that deep kind of russet reddish color all over its body, and as Greg says, in the flight feathers especially. And I think we can rule it out on this one. I agree. That's the easiest one to rule out, probably the most distinctive of the Melospizas, which gives us Song and Link now.
Song and Link, and a couple of things that stand out on this bird, as I was saying, is that the streaks are kind of fine, but fall birds, a lot of things can be going on, but the bird also has a pretty noticeable eye ring. So let's take a look at Song and Lincoln's, and as you were saying before, Nate. They're similar birds, but once you get a feel for them, they're really pretty different.
Yeah, Lincoln's just has this kind of gorgeous greenish buff color all over. It's just a super distinctive shade. And the thing about Lincoln's is, they're the same wherever you are on the continent. That's very
true.
little variation, if any variation, among Lincoln sparrows in the middle of the continent, the western part and the eastern part. Song sparrow, as we know, famously variable bird, lots of named subspecies, lots of very distinctive subspecies, especially in the west. But we get where I live in the southeast, we have those kind of classic song sparrows, but we also get those birds from Atlantic Canada that come down in the winter and that are very different looking birds. Almost Lincoln-like in the size of the manner of the streaking. The classic thing you can say about Lincoln sparrow and song sparrow, it's the thing that was told to me as a young birder, and the thing that I always pass on when I'm leading bird walks. Song sparrow looks like those streaks were drawn on with a big fat crayon. Lincoln sparrow looks like those streaks were drawn on with a freshly sharpened pencil. It's
Yep.
simple and it's almost always accurate.
It 99% of the time it is
Yeah,
accurate. I've
sure.
seen in my 50 years of doing this, I've seen maybe 2 or 3 that were so close where you're like, all right, wait a minute, which one is
Yeah, and
this?
it tends to be those song sparrows that have the kind of sharper, darker, more well-defined streaks. As we said, a link looks the same on every
And
time.
really a really worn song sparrow, which is
Hmm.
something to look for when you're looking at
Yeah,
birds that are
now.
really
Yeah.
confusing. Yeah, I wrote an essay for the ABA blog, and you can find it if you just Google my name and birding is hard. But there's a picture in there of a perfect like in between bird that is
Mhm.
so it's. I don't think that particular bird was ever 100% identified as
Really?
either a Lincoln's or a song because there was only one picture of it, and I tend to think that it was
Yeah,
a
one
song,
picture
but
birds are tough.
in
Yeah,
any
I was
case,
gonna
yeah,
say if there's any sort of question, it's usually a song
right.
because that's the variable one.
But the
Whereas Lincoln's are not.
background color of Lincoln Sparrow, it's we've talked about this before. It's that kind of unique, almost olivey gray putty.
It's cool looking. Yeah.
It's a really cool looking bird, and the way that the buffy malar really, that's the stripe on the side of the throat there coming from the bill down the side of the face.
Mhm.
It really stands out, and with the eye ring, it gives it a whole different look. And as you can see from these two in the comp, Lincoln Sparrow tends to have a thinner bill than most song sparrows, although
Mhm.
song sparrow bills are very variable. And
Yeah.
again, they can be everywhere as far
Yeah.
in sparrow bills.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
And song sparrow typically has a much longer tail. It tends to drag its tail around when it flies. It's in a very kind of unique way that makes them sort of easy to identify when one is you flush one and it's flying away from you. Lincoln sparrow less so. And you can see in this bird, this is illustrated in a lot of field guides. It's a sort of peaked head of a Lincoln
mm-hmm.
sparrow. Certainly, they don't always have that. And in our original photo, it didn't really have much of a peaked head. But I would say a lot of the time they're going to have those crown feathers kind of tipped up like that, whereas song sparrow is less inclined to do that. So all of these are sort of secondary field marks that, when you see can lead you down the path of Lincolns. But when it comes down to it, it's that kind of unique, wonderful olivey brown and the very, the buff and then the dark streaks, the dark fine streaks on the front of a Lincoln Sparrow that'll get you there almost every time.
Absolutely. And one other thing, Wayne Klockner points out on Facebook, and this is actually a really good field mark. And if you see the bird head on, facing you, Lincoln Sparrow tends to have a buffy chest, and the
Hmm.
streaking tends to be contained in that buffy background. And it's the
Mm-hmm.
same buffy that you see on the malar on the flanks, and it goes down the flanks, and it almost gives like this junco-like impression of a big white
Yeah.
horseshoe belly. And I believe that if that the salt marsh and Nelson Sparrow, that's one of the things. I forget which is
Those
which
are
right
even
now.
more difficult than Lincoln.
But yeah,
Nelson's is the one that has the buffy band, and Saltmarsh is more clean breast with the streakings. But that bird
exactly.
is like famously.
Oh
There
yeah,
are tons of mishmashy birds kind of in the middle
and
between
tons of
those. Those can be
hybrids too.
very tough. Yeah, those can be quite difficult.
But yeah, Lincoln Sparrow is found all over the place. It's a beautiful little bird, and if you get one in front of you, spend some time with it because they are just really neat looking little guys.
Yeah, definitely a bird that says fall to me in the southeast. They're
Look
not,
at the
not
honker
super
on that
common.
thing.
Yeah, we got a shorebird here. We're still talking shorebirds even deep into September. I thought we would put that to bed at the end of August, but no, it's shorebird season. Just like with sparrows, breaking your shorebirds into kind of well-defined groups is always a nice way to do it. You've got your little peeps in the Calidris genus. You've got kind of weirdos like turnstones and oyster catchers and all that. And then you've got these kind of long-legged, long-necked, long-billed marsh pipers that are
Yeah.
in the genus Tringa, and that they all have basically a very similar shape, which can make them somewhat difficult. But there's definitely some things to look for when we're picking those. The legs on this one definitely lead me in a certain direction.
Well, they are yellow, and
They're yellow.
that
Talk about good bird names. There's a good one.
speckly back, white underparts, sandpiper with leggy sandpiper with yellow legs.
Leggy sandpiper.
Really, right? That kind of narrows it down right away. There aren't that many yellow-legged shorebirds to begin with.
Not this bright. Yeah.
And not that look like that.
Yeah.
You know, red knot, we can throw that out right away. Red knot has a short little bill, and it's kind of and it's a stocky little guy that tends to be up on the drier parts of the beach. Solitary sandpiper kind of looks like this. It's got the speckles on the back, and it's gray, and it's got yellowish greenish legs. But you know, as I said when this picture popped up, look at that honking bill.
Yeah, solitary sandpiper does not have a big bill. Usually has a well-defined eye ring.
Yes.
Legs are not this yellow. They're kind of greenish. They can be pale, but not yellow.
Yeah. And so that really gets us to the two Yellowlegs. And the two Yellowlegs are lesser and greater. And the two Yellowlegs, despite being almost identical in plumage and a lot of structure, I'd say general structure.
Even their voices are somewhat
and their
similar.
Voices, they're not that hard to tell apart if you get a good look at them. And I think most people, I think that we've seen a lot of people
it's like
on
the Downey
on
and
Facebook.
Harry thing.
It's exactly
situation.
like Downey and Harry, right?
Yeah.
You know, we've had a couple of people pop in on Facebook here. One just said, "Wow," and I said, "Look at that bill." Mia says, "Definitely not a lesser." So let's just take a look at
everyone is strongly in favor of greater on YouTube.
Yes,
as
well, and with good reason. So here are the two Yellowlegs, and again, this is something that we see every year, and in the fall, people getting Yellowlegs confused, and like you were saying with Harry and Downy woodpecker, once you get a good look at them, they're really not. And you know, starting with greater Yellowlegs on the left, greater Yellowlegs has a big upturned bill. It's funny when you're looking through a scope at distant shorebirds, the thing that most gets confused with greater Yellowlegs is Hudsonian godwit. And
I was gonna say willet, but yeah.
Yeah, or willet.
Just basically big birds.
Yeah, but Yellowlegs, the willet doesn't have yellow legs; it's got gray legs.
Yeah,
as does the Hudwit.
Well, you know, I'm in my imagination, like the sun is in front of you, the bird is backlit. That's what I'm saying.
But I mean, you could see. That's what I'm saying is that Hudsonian godwit and greater Yellowlegs are really kind of close to the same size.
Yeah.
They're both.
Hudsonian godwit is a small godwit, and
it is.
greater Yellowlegs is a large tringa. Yeah,
it is, and they have a similar upturned bill, although the godwit's is more upturned, but that is extremely variable. The bill length and curvature in godwits and curlews is really all over the place if you look at it with a fine lens. But you look at the lesser Yellowlegs and how compact it is compared to the greater. It's got a shorter neck. It's got a sort of a cuter overall look with that that I don't know, is it not a pin-like bill? What is it? What
needle
would you call it? Yeah, needle-ish, big needle.
Sewing needle.
Like the kind of needle you don't want to get stuck with when you're going to give blood. It's a heavy needle. Whereas the greater Yellowlegs, the bill is again more trending godwit, like little bit of an upturn, heavier. It tends to show more of a neck, especially in the front.
Yeah, and those little chevron shaped, little V shaped feathers on the flank on
Yep.
the breast are typically a greater Yellowlegs thing. The lesser Yellowlegs is a bit more muddy, less defined a lot of
And the
times. Although in the spring they can look quite clean, but usually not chevron clean.
and lesser yellow legs, like we often talk about least sandpiper and other sandpipers, other peeps, whereas least sandpiper kind of walks around like a little mouse picking at things.
Mm-hmm.
Lesser yellow legs is kind of like the classic sandpiper. It walks and
Dainty.
picks, and it pivots up and down on its legs like this, as you can see this bird is kind of doing. And it will often do that and then stand up and call and then go back to feeding. And all of it's kind of delicate and a little clockworky. Greater Yellowlegs is a bigger bird that feeds more
Chaotic goofballs.
with a
is
little
sort of how
more
I would
a
describe
little
it.
more aggression.
Yeah, they'll fly around with their wings out, chasing stuff, chasing like small fish. They're all over the place. They're like a
Yeah.
small heron almost sometimes.
Yeah, they really are. And when you see them in the field, you can often pick the two out just by what they're doing, just by
that's
their
true.
habits.
It's true. Yeah, and
So-
fortunately, where we live, a lot of times they do like to hang out together, so that does make things a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit easier. A lot of times you'll see them in the same place, and both greater and lesser Yellowlegs are common overwintering shorebirds in the southern part of the ABA area into the Caribbean. too.
Absolutely.
So we get them throughout the winter, even inland. Sometimes they'll show up on Christmas bird counts in mild years. Boris Belchov says reminds of greenshank and wood sandpiper in Europe. Yep, very very similar actually. Very similar
Yeah.
dynamic.
Yeah, like Greenshank's a monster. It's got a big upturned bill.
It's a big one. Yeah, I mean it looks like a greater Yellowlegs with green legs for the most part.
Yeah, and an even heavier bill, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is our last bird for the day.
We did it.
But
we did it.
We are.
We did it again,
We are
Greg.
here for. Yeah, we did. Look at that. Filled up an hour. We're here for a few more minutes. So if you guys have anything that you want to bring up in the comments, we are here for you. And so let's see here. We've got.
You can make
You
a
could
traffic light out of leg-colored tringa. Yes.
Yes.
Green
That's
shank,
Gavin
yellow
Albee.
shank, yellow legs, red shank.
Yes,
I always
you
stop
could.
for a red shank. That's a handsome bird. Both of them, spotted or common.
Thoughts on ABA checklist committee report new species? Well, there's a
for it.
whole hour-long conversation.
I'm for them. I'm in favor of new species added to the ABA checklist.
Absolutely. And yeah, there will be some
Generally-
more discussion as we get close to the.
Ooh, here's a good
CLC
question.
What's that?
No, do it. Do
Oh.
your thing. And
As we get close to the
chomping at the
CLC
bit.
report being released for 2024,
Champing.
we will be discussing that more in length. So what do you got there, Nate?
Sarah Coffey has a question on YouTube. Heading to Jaegerfest tomorrow for our European friends. Those are skuas, small skuas.
Yes.
Never have seen one. What to look for? Dark wings? Question mark? I'm paraphrasing, of course. What to look
Well-
for with Jaegers? Ooh, Jaegers. So here's the thing about Jaegers. They're smaller than you think they're going to be.
They are.
They're not as big as gulls. Even like a big Pomeranian Jaeger is like ring-billed gull size, roughly.
Right.
And like little long-tailed Jaegers are quite svelte.
Right.
Yeah, dark wings. They just have this. I don't know if you've ever seen I want to say like a falcon flies, because falcons kind of have that
They do.
twittery, like wristy way of flying. But if you've ever seen like a merlin or a peregrine falcon when it's got somewhere to be, like when they really turn on the jets and stop messing around, that's sort of how Jaegers fly. And
Yep.
it is a distinctive thing that if you see it a few times, you will be able to pick it out. But they have kind of stronger wing beats. I'll say that it's all kind of relative. Whereas it's less buoyant than a tern. So a tern, if you imagine a tern flying, every time they flap their wings, their body raises a little bit, right? And so it looks like they're kind of bouncing along. When I
Mm-hmm.
say buoyancy, that's sort of what I'm talking about. Whereas a Jaeger, when it flies, like there's less movement of the body. It's just more kind of like it means business. Like it's a bird that knows where it's going. These are all kind of, I'm not sure if this is
They also,
this is
well,
working, but
they
that's what I
also,
see when I see a Jaeger.
yeah, they also tend, and it depends on the weather, but Jaegerfest, I believe that's the one up in northern Wisconsin on Lake
I believe that's
Superior.
correct.
Um, if it's a windy day and you've got some good chop on the lake or on the ocean, um, Jaegers, at least in my experience on Lake Michigan, Jaegers tend to spend more time down low along,
Yes,
like just
they do.
right
They
above
like
the
to stay
water
low.
and
Yeah.
through the troughs, and they will oftentimes like be down in the troughs where you lose sight of them, and then they'll swoop up and go after a gull or a tern
I've
or
seen
whatever,
do that.
and they
in the
will
Atlantic, yeah.
they will come from underneath and attack.
Yeah.
And that's something to be watchful for too. If you've got a bunch of gulls and things flying around,
If they're
and you
flying
see
with a
something
purpose,
dark
yes.
just come shooting in, that's your Jaeger. In terms to what to look for in specifics, look at the wingtips first. I think, and the upper side, long-tailed and parasitic, which are the two that are going to be most
Yeah, those are the two that
easily.
you're probably gonna find.
Pomeranian on the Great Lakes is
Pretty rare.
rare. Long-tailed.
That's our most
and,
common one in the Gulf Stream.
Yeah, not here. Long-tailed and parasitic are seen
why.
every year. Parasitic is most common,
Yeah.
but parasitic has more white quills in the primaries than long-tailed. Long-tailed generally has one or two, maybe three, and so it gives a different impression when you
I'm
see
always
the upper
surprised-
side of the wing.
I'm always surprised with parasitic, like how small the head looks in comparison to the body too. Like they've kind of got like a Nerf ball kind of body, and the
Yeah.
head looks rather small on the front of it. Whereas long-tailed, everything is sort of neatly proportioned. The body's small, the head is the right size for it. But parasitic always seems just a little off.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, they'll come at you low a lot of times when they're really looking to get food. When they're just kind of cruising around, they'll be kind of in the middle. But yeah, they're neat. I mean, just when you see one, when you get a good look at one, focus on how it's flying and how that is different than the gulls and maybe terns that are going to be around, and it will help you get the next one.
Absolutely.
Neat birds. One of my
So-
favorites. I did. I used to work at we're going long on this one, but
That's
I got
all
a
right.
Jaeger story. I used to do some volunteer work at the Museum of Natural Sciences here in North Carolina, the big museum in Raleigh, in the bird lab downstairs, and where the cabinets are with all the birds. And one of my jobs was that this may have been just busy work that the collecting manager put me on, but I was she said, we've got a bunch of Jaegers here. Can you age all these Jaegers? And so I was pulled them out and I was like trying to age these birds and tell how old they were. And I don't know if you've ever seen like a close up of Jaeger's feet. They have talons like birds of prey, like raptors. Like their claws are freaking massive, and then they've got these webbed feet. It's really disconcerting, but neat birds. Big claws. Definitely a predatory bird.
Yes, and they're really a lot of fun to watch. So you'll have hoping
Yeah,
you get
they're
some
cool. They do
hoping you
cool
get
stuff.
some Jaegers out there at Jaegerfest. They're a lot of fun to watch. So
Mark
yeah, I
Lundgren
think
wants to talk about hybrids at some point next time
yeah.
on. Yeah, I don't know. We don't.
yeah,
get
next
too
time
many
if we
hybrids to
find
talk about.
find an interesting hybrid, I think we've talked about a couple here in the past.
We've
when
got
we get something
They don't
that's-
show up all that often. Hybrids are actually kind of uncommon in most.
It's
birds.
that they're. Although we did have a Lawrence's not too long, a Lawrence's Warbler not too long
yeah.
ago, which is golden wing, blue wing.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
right.
so
I do remember that a couple weeks ago.
just as a reminder before we head on out of here, the Sacramento, California ABA Community Weekend is the end of October. If you're going to be in the Sacramento area at the end of October, please come out and join us. Go to aba.org right there on the homepage, and you can sign up to join us out there. We'd love to have you. And I
If you enjoy these sorts of programs, please consider joining the ABA, aba.org/join. You get a lot of cool stuff in addition to helping us out what we do. I feel like we should mention that before. A lot of
squeeze that
partnerships,
in while we're going over.
OM Systems, ICE, Hunts, photo, video, lots of cool things. You can get to more information on all that at our website.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, I think with that, I think we are done. And thank all of you for joining us here. It's, as always, been a lot of fun.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Check out our newsletter. My brain is done. Check out our newsletter for a heads up on when we're gonna do this. Probably in a couple weeks. We'll see you.